We are very happy to have you with us today, and I will hand over to you now.
Yes, thank you, Janice, and thank you for that welcome. And it's also a great pleasure to be here. This is my second visit to Ghana, which is not such good news because I have a list of countries that I've visited, and it's always a special treat to go to a new country that I can add to that list. But equally, it's a special treat to come back to one that's on the list, and given that there's 120 countries on the list, it's quite difficult to go to a new one. It's much easier to go to one I've already been to. But it's a great pleasure to be here, and at this time of year when the weather is pleasant. Janice has promised me she will actually advance my slides. My role today is to give you a little introduction to the topic to set the scene for what we'll be talking about over the next couple of days. And just to give you a couple of introductory thoughts to get us kicked off. So perhaps if we can move along. This slide I thought I would start off with is one that I developed a little while ago when I started thinking about how much of my own life is actually connected to stuff. I have a cell phone. I got given an Apple Watch by mistake, because I didn't really want one, but then my wife thought I should have one. And given that my wife agrees with me most of the time, she actually got my daughter to buy it for me for my birthday, so I couldn't argue with my daughter. I drive a car that has all sorts of weird connections to it. I actually got in my house a thermostat that knows not only what the temperature is in the house, but when the sun sets outside, so that it can adjust the temperature to work out based on that. And all of that is actually connected together so that when I approach the house, it knows when I'm coming and going. I fill in lots of things on my calendar. I put all my trips on. I buy things on the internet. So basically, the world knows what's going on with me, much more than I would actually like it to. I can't step anywhere without people knowing, and therefore being possible to actually decide what to do with that for me. And I think we do live in this increasingly interconnected world. There was a time when we all had a basic idea about how a washing machine worked. Now we've got no idea about how much everything works, let alone what it's doing for us. So the potential is enormous, and I think most of the time, particularly when it's not our day job, which for most of us in this room it isn't, we don't really realise just what can be done. And I think we're going to learn a lot more about what can be done over the next couple of days. So that will be quite exciting. I'll just give you an example. This was an article in the Financial Times last month, so it's not that long ago. And they were having some discussion about not just how connected I am to the wider world, but how connected cows are to the wider world. And now they've succeeded in actually putting connecting devices either inside or around the cow, so that you know when the cow sits down, stands up, walks around, how much it eats. This helps tremendously with the nutrition of the cow, the amount of milk that gets produced, how many calves get produced, a whole lot of useful things. You might think that this would come from some dairy farming country like New Zealand or Switzerland, but the most connected cows in the world are in India, and there are millions of them. So there's all of these applications, not just in those kind of situations, which are interesting indeed. This slide, yes. This slide I have for you for a different reason, and other people will put slides up that look a little bit like this. When people talk about InsurTech in particular, they're often talking about how much money is being invested in InsurTech and how that is growing. So one side of the InsurTech development was what we were talking about before, what you can do with it, how we're getting more connected, all of those sorts of things. Another part is how people are actually spending money on InsurTech and how much that is growing. Almost all of the charts look like this, like getting bigger and bigger all the time, and possibly also showing different areas where InsurTech is going on. What this points out to me in particular, and this is actually 2016, the most recent data point on this one. I happen to borrow from PwC, but there are plenty of charts available that look like this, is that it is getting bigger and bigger, and it's been getting bigger for at least 5 or 6 years, since 2012. Now, for most of us involved in the regulatory side of insurance, we are only just joining this party. But what this tells me is that a lot of people have been doing stuff in this area for some time, and it's not only is it growing, but it's growing very fast. So we're going to learn more about the different things that are happening in InsurTech and how we as regulators and supervisors can respond to that. Now, I did want to make one little point now at this point, is that insurance is actually very good, in fact, at doing some of these sorts of things. It's not as new to us as we first think. In fact, most things where radical new things get introduced in insurance, it's not actually a radical new thing. It's just that we came along and decided we could use it for an insurance purpose, but it's already been going on. So in tropical parts of the world where they have hurricanes and cyclones, the modelling that's done for those hurricanes and cyclones was not invented for reinsurance purposes. Much and all as we seem to think it's used for that all the time. And it was invented to stop oil rigs falling down in the sea when a hurricane goes past. So we took that mathematical hocus-pocus work that was done by the engineers and adopted it, re-engineered it to the insurance purpose. Radio frequency emission device tags, which are quite small little things, were originally used to track inventory. So when they go past something, they send out a message so that you can work out where it is. Very useful in shipping containers and things like that. There are lots of camels in India that have those tags in them now. So when they walk past the reading device, we know where the camel is, which is useful to know if you've got the camel insured. Telematics in cars. Now, this is something that I came to very recently. My wife decided we should get a discount on our insurance. She likes to get stuff for free. And so she said, well, what about this telematics? Should we put this in our car? We're getting every other kind of discount that the car insurance could offer us. And I thought, well, that's a bit of a worry. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it makes the car work more difficult. I was sceptic. Sure enough, she said, well, let's do it anyway. So we get it, and you get this little plug thing, and you stick it in a slot in the car, and it then tells the insurance company all about my driving. In this particular case, it happened for 6 months, and they give me a bigger discount because I'm a safe driver. And he also beeps at me to tell me when I'm not driving safely so that I can slow down or whatever else I have to do. These plugs have been in cars since 1995. Telematics as a topic in insurance is very new, but the plug to stick it in is really old. And then I thought, well, I wonder if we can stick these plugs in cars in lots of other places, particularly places where the internet works quite well, because you all have good mobile phone service in a lot of countries in Africa. This could be a great idea. I discover that there's people who've actually replaced the plug altogether. You don't need the plug anymore. It can be simulated on your phone because the phone knows lots of things about where it is. If you turn the phone like this, the screen goes around because there's something inside that tells it when it's turned. So they used all of those things to replace the telematics device. So now I can have a telematics device in a car that doesn't have a plug, or on a motorbike, or on a donkey cart, if I want to insure those things for some reason. So these things are moving a long way, and we don't need to, we're actually using something that has been invented to do something else. We're using something that was invented so the screen shows the right way on the phone. Of course, digital financial services, you may not know, but Africa has been the leader in digital financial services for as long as I can remember. M-Pesa in Kenya is often the sort of show pony on this one whenever anyone talks about it anywhere in the world. I remember being shown a video on YouTube which was used to advertise M-Pesa about how you send money from the city to the relatives in the countryside. And I thought, I'll never do that. about a year later, my daughter went to university in a different country. My wife said she needs to have money sent to her, which is what my wife would say when my daughter needs money. And lo and behold, it was an emergency, and I managed to do it on my phone. I thought, look at me catching up with the Kenyans. So yes, but there's a lot of things you can do in digital financial services in Africa you can't do in other parts of the world. So that's very impressive. So I think to some extent we're in a reinvention mode. Now, I should just show this to you as one way that might be helpful when you come new to this area where people are talking about so many different things and so many different investments, how I just categorise them into a few different areas so that simple people without technology background like me can get a bit of an understanding about all of the different things people talk about. And I think it's also helpful because InsurTech in particular, people talk about things that are either all one particular topic or all another, and this highlights the different things. So when you hear a presentation, it's not all about that part of it. But it does seem to me that it's relatively about 4 different things. The first one is collecting information. And the more information we can collect, whether it be from phones or solar panels or any number of other things that are around, then that's really the critical nature of a lot of this. If you can't collect the data in the first place, there's not much more you can do after that. So there's a lot about what kinds of new sensors we can have and where they might be, how things are connected, how you get power sources to things, and how that then gets transmitted through the ecosystem to that sort of make that data available. And then for insurance to be able to use the data that's either newly collected or in some cases the data that's actually already there but we're just not using up until now. So it would be new for insurance purposes. There's a whole second area which is all about making use of data, particularly the more data we have. Some people call this big data. Understanding and analysing data has been something that insurance has been doing for as long as I can remember. So we're actually not bad at this, it's just that we're getting more and more data to be able to use. But the whole process of being able to analyse data and make use of it more quickly is a sort of a whole new area. The third area is other things that we can do and how we actually make use of it. We now have people who are interacting using the phone, so we can interact with them more using the phone. For example, we can actually change or inform or drive people's behaviour in that way. This is particularly popular in health insurance, but there's a whole lot of other applications that are possible in that area to make that delivery more effective to customers or to make business decisions that change the risk profile more effective. So for example, in my case, once I've got something that is making a noise at me when I drive in a certain way, I change my driving behaviour. So the nature of the risk changes. And then there's a whole lot of other disruptions we'll hear about just exactly the structure about what we're actually doing in the way we're running the whole business is concerned. The most popular one that people talk about, peer-to-peer, we'll hear about in a little while, but there's also the whole artificial intelligence, blockchain, all of those sorts of things, so structural things. I think most things tend to fit into those 4 kind of categories. And the last slide, conveniently, only last week, a really important person made a speech, more important than me, the Deputy Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, and he pointed out, from a regulatory point of view, 5 points that they thought was important in this context. So I thought that would be useful for us also as we start off this next couple of days as regulators about what would be good practices for regulation and supervision in this area. First one, give attention to innovation, focused attention. And I think by being here, we're well on the way to that. Secondly, creating facilitators of innovation. We'll hear about that over the next couple of days. Coordinating domestically, always important for regulators, as well as global cooperation and with the standard setting bodies. And also building staff capacity to have a deeper knowledge of what these essential technologies and exponential technologies are. And I think we're certainly for me at least, I'm looking forward to getting to the end of tomorrow having learnt a tremendous amount about this, Janice. I think I will. So with that, I'd like to give you that context, and then we're going to move forward into the first session. Janice, you had some videos to share with us, which I think will be really good. But thank you for your attention, and I hope we have a tremendously rewarding couple of days.
So thank you, Craig.